All right. Hello. Sounded really awkward. Let's try that again. Uh, if I was a funnier person, I would have done it more awkwardly. Um, but I'm a middle at best. Anyway, this is a bad start to episode 5, I think, of Wikipedia Wanderer. Um, I am uh, the host, I guess. Uh, I don't know. Uh, I would go by Pez Girl or my given name. I haven't really thought about these things, but I'm just hoping that there are people out there who think it's interesting to hear people ramble on about random things that they didn't know about. And hopefully, I can uh, ramble in an entertaining manner. At least that's the theory. Um, yeah. Uh, i- if you're new, and I'm sure you are, the concept is we just pick random Wikipedia articles and check them out and see. We go through a few rabbit holes, and maybe we should go through more of them, but I try to um, only go so far to stick to those subjects, but maybe um, I don't know. I don't want to be too lenient on that because I'd like to cover as many subjects as I can, but not make a video that's too long. Um, if I get if I get any followers or listeners, maybe they can tell me what they prefer. But anyway, enough rambling. We usually cover a couple of things. Like last episode, we covered the 2012, I believe, 2012 Dubai World Cup, which is a horse race, and we went into the winners. We looked at his jockey, we looked at his horse, um, we looked at one of the horses' name was like it was a silly name, like it was. I think one of the parents was like awesome dude or funny name like that, and so we had looked up uh their parentage and actually found a common ancestor between the two. And anyway, between the winner and the what's like the second to last loser, I believe. Anyway, just whatever stands out, tickles my fancy. Seems like it's gonna be interesting. As far as the random articles go, we found a comic book that was created by Nick Cage out of the blue. I don't know. There's a lot of mundane stuff, a couple of rivers, or but the point is to learn because you never know. Me and my husband, uh, he plays a warship game. I'm sorry if you, for some reason, have been here from the beginning, but I don't know how the or when or how when this would how or when or where or when this would get out to people. So I just assume everybody is a new listener until I start seeing people say, "Hi, I listened." Excuse me. Um, but he plays a war of World of Warships or whatever, and it's got these realistic, real ships in it. And he'll ask me like, "What's the deal with this one?" and tell me more about this. And um, some of the captains are real, I think. And so we'll look them up and just see a specific or if they're interesting. And one time we found that the Chinese captured a riverboat because um, w- we declared war on them and the captain was out to lunch. And so they ended up with this riverboat. And we were like, why is that on the list? And we heard this, I don't know if it's incredible or funny, incredibly funny. No, this story about them kind of getting uh, being, I guess, some of the first POWs of the war. Um, anyway, we found interesting stories and all sorts of stuff buried in these. I looked up Underwood Deviled Ham Company, and I found out that they had a really rich history and had really contributed a lot of um, uh, food preservation methods like in canning and invented the word can because they were their accountants just did it because they were up to their ears in sales. I guess they how helped with the sterilization and the preservation of like um shellfish, I think. Um I think there was a limited selection for seafood, and they really boomed the economy for like New England or I don't know where they were based. I can't remember. But all these fisheries that in the Civil War era or before, couldn't they couldn't ship to the middle of the country, and now they could. So it's just this little can with the funny label now. With the food maybe your dad or grandpa eats. Um, but they actually, and then like the grandson ended up working with some like not MIT, but like the MIT of like it might have been a branch of some school like that where they work in like microbacterial preservation. I'd have to look it up. But I couldn't I? Here we go. The research with MIT, the grandson of the founder. I was not making stuff up, was I? In heat-resistant bacterial spores. I The study prompted similar for canned lobster, sardines, peas, tomatoes, corns, and spinach. I was not. And then they were able to do to increase seafood production. This is the OG William himself. Great guy, great guy. Union guy. Um, lobster, oyster, mackerel. Um, yeah. So, and then they have one of the largest sardine factories in the world. World. Um, people tried to stop them from putting devils, so they were renegades. But yeah, and then in the 60s, this is what I was thinking of. Um, later the company um da, 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 da. No, that's not what I was thinking of. Here we go. In 62. Oh, that was just them giving out monies. Here's 50s. The president brought the MIT president meet Prescott. Prescott was the samples guy. The guy from 1900. I think I looked that up and it's like, yeah, he was a really old man. Excuse me for. I don't mean to sound. I'm trying not to sound like maybe a Daria. I mean, I love her, but if I start sounding like her, I feel like I don't. I'm not. Well, can't understand me if I don't use words either. I don't feel like I are understandable. Anyway, this is all to say everything I said was true, that they really started tin canister became can. All the things I said. Um about their collaboration with MIT to um help with food preservation and um fight bacterial spores and um send stuff out to the troops uh and seafood, lots of seafood. Oh, where was it from? Before moving to the United States. Right, I remember he was importing, exporting. But then he started with condiments and then he worked his way into like kind of making new stuff. Um that's why he was already like popping enough to have, bookkeepers use the word can. Right, he moved to canning because the glass makers couldn't keep up with all his pickled vegetables, cranberries, mustard, ketchup. various kinds. Um, but where was it? Where was it founded? Um, right, he started in because he was already working with South America. So when he got here, he continued. Um, so he in Boston, he, via New Orleans. Uh, Citation needed, but it was established in Boston. I had just read. What a terrible skimmer. I gotta turn in my skimmer badge. I'm eating up the time allotment. I'm trying to make these. Yeah. I feel like I have to over explain myself. I'm the Wiki Wanderer and I wander Wiki. Let's get to it. So we're gonna pick a random article now. The S element. S element is an RNA element found in the P42D and related plasmids. The S element has multiple functions and is believed to act as a negative receptor of rep C transcription, and to and be required for efficient replication as a translational enhancer of rep C, also CCtRNA. All right, a lot going on. Let's look at the first thing. I think it's kind of cool. It looks like one of those belts from like the 2000s. Um, like very hot topicy. I didn't mean to do that. Now a plasmid is a small extra chromosomal DNA molecule within a blood cell that is physically separable, uh, mm, physically separated from chromosomal DNA and can replicate independently. They are most commonly found as small circular double-stranded, see our girl, uh, molecules in bacteria and archaea. So is the S element an RNA element for everybody or just bacteria? Well, it's not clear in the thing. We could. I mean, whenever I do this, I'm getting the AI overview now. Well, they think it's the element for sulfur, so that's what Google's telling it. So that's the problem there. Um, the rest of it is okay. So let's break it down because none of us really know what it's saying, but we can squeeze the most understanding out of it. Um, okay, RNA is like half of DNA. Oh, RNA elements. Regions of non-coding DNA which regulate the transcription of neighboring genes. I guess don't they don't make a difference to the composition of the two RNA strands to make a DNA strand. Like if the they come together and they say you're going to be a redhead and this does something, it's not going to change you being a redhead, but it changes how well those, um, those two sides bond together or something. Throwing it out there, I'm just a skimmer. Um, oh, PT42D. Well, we could find out what that was. Translate to English. I wonder if that is a bacteria. It's not the bacteria itself, but a symbolic plasmid found in bacterium. And this is the bacterium. Fucking. I'm so sorry to be using um this. Let me see if we can Wikipedia turn this around to Wikipedia. Um, it's taking so long. It doesn't look like Wiki has it, but fortunately, Micro Wiki does. Its function is responsible for swarming, promoting surface colonization, and the ability to sense low oxygen. And then you have repses in protein for replication. So, yeah, that was our missing thing that we missed. So the S element is an RNA element. An RNA element is something that doesn't inhibit the, doesn't change how the DNA, like what the DNA is going to be, but it changes like how well it comes together, whatever rep C is. And oh, it, multiple function is in, well, and sorry. Um, but my point was we found more about what this is, and that it all does come together, and that we are talking about this bacteria, and we kind of have all the pieces. We don't really know what they mean, but let's get through this because I feel like I'm taking so long on everything. I don't I guess it's making me nervous, and I don't know whether I should be rushing or taking my time. So if you come across this by some uh by some force of nature, let me know. Um Transcription, which is duplicating. So duplicating by splitting, for gene expression, if you know what I mean. And it's required for replication, and it acts as a translational. So we never found out what that is. What's translation? Translation? Is it translational? Am I an idiot? No, there's no N, so it's translational. So what's translation? That sounds wrong. That's got to be wrong. Um, Here's what I like to do. I like to put things because you have trouble finding a pronunciation of certain words or certain phrases if it's not in Google, if it's in another language, you never know. So this guy's last name, Veyes, they couldn't really tell me, and it was so specific. So I put it in, knowing they would realize it's French and the English is bullshit. But the French, of course, is Veyes. So he's Sons of Veyes. He was an athlete, like a golfer. I couldn't tell you. Done too many. Um,
Translational.
Translational. It is translate. It's in the word translate. Why did I think there was an N? I just took a lot of steps to say I'm stupid. So it helps probably it come together, obviously. Um, in the process of biological cells in which proteins are produced using RNA molecules as templates. The generated protein is a sequence of amino acids. This sequence is determined by the sequence of nucleotides in the RNA. Um, but anyway, translation is the process in which biological cells use in which proteins are used. Come on, Aaron, you can read. Proteins are produced using RNA molecules as templates. Um, so you can see they're like making them off of the RNA. Anyway, isn't that interesting? Here's the plasmids. They're outside of the DNA. And this is a plasmid, so it'd be outside of the DNA. It helps the DNA get along and make copies and glue those copies together to make more DNA, which is how you survive and produce. So, it's important for bacteria like this guy. Next subject. God, I will get it together. Here we have something super complicated, and we will get that together. Now, this is an English contract. Um, Swiss Atlantic Society, Societe d'Armament, SA, NV Rotterdamsche Kolen Central. Um, this is a landmark case in the House of Lords concerning the notion of fundamental breach of contract, the inequity of bargaining power. This is going to be something which is, um, oh, let's show off all the words that I'm forgetting. Um, Presidential. Am I using that word right? I don't feel like I am. Precedential. Um, when the court has a precedent case, um, it's like, oh, we decided that, oh, this guy was defending himself. and he had to kill this other guy. And so there's an exception to murder. And then that case becomes the precedent case for people to be like, hey, there's self defense. And now that is a something you can hang your hat on. You know, that's a precedent that is set by the court, and you just have to argue, is that self-defense? But it's not murder, but is it self-defense? Um anyway, that's the sort of thing where now you can argue that. Now there's a precedent for the law to kind of side with you because they've sided with somebody in a very similar case. I just saw, I think it was John Oliver, or somebody pointing out all these cases that seem to be really similar and say, oh, the courts seem to have a bias because these all seem to be similar. It'll be like, oh, it happened when somebody kicked somebody, but it didn't happen. But that the precedent was that somebody punched somebody, that kind of stuff. Um, okay, let's see if we can get through this because this was already a very fancy words. The Suisse Atlantique Societe d'Armement Essay wie NV Rotterdamsche Kolen Centrale. So let's see. It's in the House of Lords, English House of Lords. I don't know if anybody else has House of Lords. I just want to be fair. Um, it was subsequently upheld by another House of Lords case, Photo Productions v. Securicor, and together these two cases form the definitive statement of the common law prior to the Unfair Contract Terms Act 1977. Um, the case involved the 2-year time charter to export coal from Europe to the US. The ship was to make as many trips as possible, and the owners were to be paid an agreed freight rate according to the amount of cargo carried. If the lay time were exceeded, the if the lay time were exceeded, the charterers were to pay a demurrage of $1,000 a day. I assume a demurrage is a penalty fee. Let's see if we're right. Oh, it's specific to vessel chartering is the amount of liquidated damages owed by a charterer to a ship owner when the charterer remained in possession of the vehicle for the purpose of loading and unloading lay time beyond the time allowed by contract. You know, I actually just heard of that kind of stuff because I not to brag, watch TikTok, and there's a girl on there who kind of very flatly um watches is it Below Deck? I don't call something a parody of what the real thing is. It's the real thing of the show where fancy people go out on fancy yachts, and this is the crew of those fancy yachts. It's a reality show. And so I know that they have to be on a tight schedule, and people will kind of whine and cry, and it's like, no, 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 we gotta bebop, do bop. We don't have time for this. Um, okay. So if they were exceeded at loading and unloading that payload, they were $1,000 a day. Serious delays occurred because the charters had difficulty both in getting cargo to port and in loading and unloading efficiently. Nevertheless, the ship owner did not cancel the contract, but allowed the charter to continue for the remainder of the 2 years. In all, only 8 trips were made. What? I mean, I know that means 16 trips from Europe to the US, but that doesn't seem good. Maybe I'm crazy. Let's see how many was expected or what the deal was. Um, uh, the owners claimed that without delays, a further 6 trips were feasible. Agreed. 6 trips would have been like 13. Yeah, 2 years. There's like 2 months to fuel up uh the your the coal payload, and then get your way to the old USA and back 2 months. And then I guess the crew has to, wait like a week or whatever while they reload the ship. Yeah, I feel like it's possible. But they let it go on, even though they had all these fees. So $1,000 a day, and it ended up costing them my house. It's 150,000. That's 150 days. The owner sued for damages, saying the breach should not be limited to the demarrage. Hello, demarrage amount, because the charter's gross delays amounted to a fundamental breach of contract. To explain the financial background, from the charter's point of view, it may have been economically more efficient to delay loading and unloading and deliberately act in breach of contract rather than carry it out to make more voyages, because after the contract had been made, the reopening of the Suez Canal led to a fall in freight rates. Oh, do. Okay, but okay, that's the charter's point of view. That's the guy who's getting sued. So he says it's more economically efficient to, according to him, It's very vague. But and breach the contract. But what does he think they should have done instead? To delay the loading and unloading. I don't know how you delay it. It's boat talk. I don't understand. But I get it. He's like the Suez Canal rate uh, opened up. So falling in rate. But he's like, so you should have fired me and paid somebody less money to do it again, um, and delay what you were doing and break your contract. That I mean, that might have been less expensive than a house. Um, the judgment. Now remember, this is a presidential case where the House of Lords now hangs their hat on this, and this is uh something you can argue in court. Um, and as long as the court agrees that you do have a case that is similar to this, then they might agree with you. um, the owners claimed that the delays were so great as to constitute a fundamental breach of the charter party. And they argued the that the fee was so derisory that the term amounted to an exclusion clause denying the ship owner appropriate compensation. Amounted to an exclusion clause. See, this is not boat talk. This is lawyer talk. Um, denying the ship owner appropriate compensation. I understand that part. And further, that the case, this other case, meant that in the event of a fundamental breach, the law automatically denied such protection of any exclusion clauses. See, they appealed to this other case and said, hey, look, you voted that this happened this time, so you should vote the way you did then. Um, the House of Lords observed that since the charter guy did not prescribe a minimum number of voyages, there was no inherent breach for only taking the 8 rather than they said minimum 6. But they were saying 17? I don't know. When was this case? 1967. Well, this is like tanker talk, so I don't know how many voyages could be made. But anyway, they never said, "Hey, you have to do this many." It said, "Do as many as you can." And they said, "We did this the way that uh, whoever wanted them to, either the charter party wanted to or the owners wanted to." And nobody, I guess, told them to do different. They just racked up the fees until the 2 years was over. which seems like a really crazy idea. Here's all the coal. Just get as much of it as you can over there. Just do your best. Just do your best. What? That's crazy. I know people work at a factory. They are definitely not told, okay, you have 12 hours in your shift to do your best. They are definitely told, write down how much you do. That's how much we want you to do. But write down how much you do. But do your best, but write down how much you do and know how much you're required to do. Okay, so they had this magic number 17 and they were like, that wasn't in the paperwork. You got to provide the paperwork. Uh, if the delays meant that the charter had exceeded lay time, then the penalty would be payable. But since the penalty clause plainly showed that the parties never contemplated the possibility of delay, it followed that the delays did not amount to fundamental breach. Nevertheless, the penalty clause was in effect in limitation, restricting the ability of the shipowner to claim actual losses. I mean, fair, but so does that mean outside of the thing? The case that they stated, uh, had overstated the law, and whether or not a fundamental breach extinguishes any protection that the defendant might rely on was a question of conduct and not a question of law. Therefore, the shipowners were not entitled only to claim the the charter party penalty of $1,000 a day, not full compensation for their actual loss. We're entitled only. Okay. Okay. So they can only say, hey, these guys did a bad job because they were so late doing this stuff. And the and they're like, well, we also have other losses, probably with the people that they were delivering stuff to, or who knows? I guess they might have been banking on having X amount of coal and they were, like 3 times disappointed. They only got like almost a third of what they expected to get. So, um, they can't get for the losses. They can only get they act like there's a breach there and um there's like it wasn't in the paperwork. It wasn't in the paperwork. Um one of the guys said in the ordinary way the customer has no time to read them. And if he did read them, it would probably take a lot to understand them. And if he did understand and object to any of them, he would generally be told that he could take it or leave it. And then if he went to another supplier, the result would be the same. Freedom to contract must surely imply some choice and room for bargaining. It was plain from his comments that he viewed the shipowner to be the stronger contractual party, and neither law nor equity should come to their aid once they prescribed once they had prescribed penalty terms that were insufficient. I Oh, this was the charter party terms. Um, yeah, that I'm guessing he's saying that they should have covered it better. It, it sounds like everybody's agreeing that the contract didn't cover the contingency of what ended up happening, which is always why their paperwork is a million um, miles long because it says, like, hey, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, because you don't know all these precedents that, you know, and now you have to tell people how to open a can or whatever. Um, distinguishes this from a deviation of some other cases. After this, the Court of Appeal patently ignored the findings of this case. A series of cases where the Court of Appeal patently ignored the findings in this case. The House of Lords were less than amused where I think I know I'm over time, but I think we have to do one more. Um, I'm guessing the court did not like this case, and so it may have voted in a way that showed maybe some bias. Let me look. Let me look. You might be ahead of me. You might be ahead of me. Um, in the photo production case, they emphatically reaffirmed the principle of this. That was the one here, which was, let's just read this really quick. Um, so a photo production company, so engaged a security business to guard, obviously, to guard their premises at night. Okay. Seems really straightforward. A night watchman started a fire at the factory to keep himself warm. Where was this factory? What do you mean he started a fire? A night watchman started a fire at their factory, and the plant was burnt down. And that was a couple of houses. 6,500 $1,000. Wait, six and a half, six and 600. I'm doing this very poorly. $650,000 worth of damage. When they sued the security guard firm, they argued that an exemption clause in their contract excused liability. Excuse me, liability. The clause provided under no circumstance shall the security guard firm be responsible for any injurious act or default by any employee unless such act or default could have been foreseen and avoided by the exercise of due diligence and on the part of the security firm. And the photo factory argued that the clause didn't apply under the doctrine of fundamental breach, that the breach of contract went to the root of the contract and invalidated the whole argument and extinguished the exclusion clause. That's a lot of talk. I do want to dip my toe into this because I didn't expect this to be interesting as a case on its own. Sorry for a deep dive. I don't know if people want deep dives or toe dips, but that's the facts of the case. And um the Court of Appeal held the doctrine of fundamental breach did apply, and that the security guard firm was liable. He said if the breach was fundamental, then the exclusion clause would be invalid following his decision of the other case that we're going to look into. He said, it seems to me that the two ways can be seen to meet in practice so as to produce a result in principle which may be stated thus. Although the clause in it, the last one he said, it kind of was like regular person talk. But okay, lawyer talk. Although the clause in its nature and ordinary meaning would seem to give exception from or limitation of liability for a breach, nevertheless, the court will not give the party that exemption or limitation. The court can say the parties as reasonable men cannot have intended that there should be an exemption or limitation in the case of this breach. In stating the principle that arises the figure in air. To be fair, the figure in reasonable men, the spokesman of this is really not helping me. Thus we reject the long years of principle which lies behind all our striving. The court will not allow a party to rely on an exemption or limitation clause in circumstances in which it would not be fair or reasonable to allow reliance on it, and in consideration whether it's fair and reasonable, the court will consider whether it was in standard form and whether there was equality of bargaining power and the breach and so forth. I am so sorry. Sometimes you just start reading something and you're like, I gotta just start going blah 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 and yada yada yada. The House of Lords overturned the appeal and held that the exclusion clause was affected and it exempt them from liability. Lord Diplock, I can't, um, Lord, I, um, it's not even that I'm a child, but I actually think like, oh, Diplock is like totally a name you can give somebody because like it's not Dick or something. So you're like, Diplock. That's a funny name for a kind of dickhead character, Diplock. Or Lord Diplock. I gotta know, do we have a picture for this guy? Ah, shit. Baron Diplock? Oh my goodness. Oh, look at him. You gotta get images, sir. Yes, Queen. Queen serving at. He wears it this way. He wears it that way. He wears it this way. He wears it that way. Dun 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 dun. Okay, that's old Diplock. We call him. William John Kenneth Diplock, Baron Diplock, all of you know. He died a couple years after I was born, and he is a judge. His father was a Diplock, and his father was a Diplock before him. Um, called to the bar. The legal term of art in most common law jurisdictions where a person must be qualified to be allowed to argue and then said that you've been called to receive a call to the bar. But that's not uh, I get the bar, but it's like being called to heaven. You're called by the angels, meaning your grandma died. Um, anyway, yeah, old Lord Diplock, you saw the stunner, old Kenny Diplock. Um, he held that the clause of effectiveness was the construction of the contract and that it covered damage. So, like, if it hadn't said damage, he might not. He noted the reports are full of cases in which that would appear to be very strained constructions that have been placed upon exclusion clauses. So the need should have gone since the passage of this unfair act, because this happened in it was decided in the 80s. I don't know when this happened. But I guess he's saying that that shouldn't have even been allowed, but it was there, and maybe they both agreed upon it. I don't know. Oh, so the need for such strained constructions should have gone since this Unfair Contract Terms Act. Lord Wilberforce, these names, they just Wilberforce. Um, I'm working on some fiction, and I am working on a story where everybody's very posh and very, very rich. I mean, very, very rich. Old money, new money, your Musks, your um Rothschilds, your billionaires. And so there's a mix of everybody. But so I'm always looking for names. Names. Everybody's got a name. Your butler's got a name. It's not just their name, it's their whole family's names. And so it's like rats where there's 20, and it's like, yeah, for every character there's like all these people around them. So if you have somebody from China or India, you have to talk about their family's name and they have staff, and I guess I already said that. But it's a plume. Once you have one, you have all these people up here. Anyway, so Diplock said what he said. Wilberforce uh, is why I mentioned what I mentioned before. Writing for the court overturned Denning shrugged shoulders, um, and found that the exclusion clause could be relied upon. He explicitly rejected Denny's application for the doctrine of fundamental breach and opted for the rule and construction approach. Exempted clause are to be interpreted the same way as any other, regardless of the breach of scope. Inclusion on the other facts will, before it's found, the Exclusion Act precluded all liability, even which the harm was caused intentionally. What? Like, even if the guy intentionally burned down the factory, they still wouldn't be liable. I mean, I agree. The key to that case would be to know that this guy was stupid. This guy wasn't properly trained. This guy had problematic behavior before. This guy was like not smart, like not somebody who should have been trusted to be on his own. He lit a fire to warm himself. Was he like, did he wash up ashore? Like, where did he find this guy? Um, so that would be where I would start, would be like, well, why they're liable because he was a danger, a clear and present danger. Anyway, let's see if I can understand what this next part is. Um, Scope of inclusion is determined by examining the construction of the contract on the facts he found that the exclusion clause precluded all liability, even when harm caused intentionally. We said that. He went out of his way to disprove the doctrine of fundamental breach. Um, they talked about their earlier stuff and the case that brought us here getting. That's gonna be a bunch of talk that I'm not gonna understand. It was easier to understand that one guy. Um, it's clear to him that that his earlier decision is directly opposed, that the House's decision, because he's appealing, um, or the House's decision in the the case that brought us here is directly opposed to the merit of the doctrine of their argument, I guess. I wonder if American legal talk would be as difficult for me as the British stuff is. Um, I'm not saying that, um, well, I guess I am saying it. I'm wondering whether it would be clearer for me to understand if it was American English legal system. Um, just because some of the words may not mean what I think they mean. Um, there's a lot of uh, just stuff that is foreign, even though it seems recognizable. Um, Lengthy and perhaps may say sometimes indigestible speeches of their lordships are correctly summarized. Mm, well, we agree on one thing. The case is remembered because it's an explicit rejection of the doctrine of fundamental breach under English law. Secondly, it's remembered as a high water mark of the disputes between Bending-led Court of Appeal and increasingly unamused House of Lords, who strongly disapproved of Denny's attempts to remold the law in a manner that he perceived in to fit the justice of the situation before him. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, do you think? So if the House of Lords is the well, the House of Lords is like the Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal is the Court of Appeal, and they think that he's moving the benchmark towards fairness and not the letter of the law. And I'm not sure how that would shake out in America. It would, because I think the people might be like, but if not for, then like why? Well, then we don't want that. We want the fair court then. Um, is a strong confirmation of the principles of the case that we brought us here, the Swiss Atlantic case, which is now considered final statement of the common law prior to the Unfair Contract Act. So there was another case. There's another case that caught my eye. Um, it just said that the case may, and I guess I was excited because it was like, oh, they didn't like being tossed this case, but they didn't like being tossed this case because they don't like the guy in the Court of Appeals, and they don't like having to do this. Um, I'm sorry, I just like cases. This is going on so long. Um, the sewer, not the suey. The plaintiff engaged the defendants to design and install their factory, an old mill, a pipe system to convey hot molten wax in the production of plasticine. Um, that was worded very weird, but basically these people have a mill and they are producing plasticine. And they hired this guy to design and install pipe system for wax, hot molten wax to make plasticine. And plasticine is like, it looks like a Play-Doh. Because of its non-drying property, it's a material common chosen for stop motion animation. That's really interesting. So it is just a modeling clay. Um, so I would think that it's more like it's more like a children's toy. It says Play-Doh's made with flour and dries. Um, but I guess plasticine doesn't. So, it's great in stop motion. You can come in the next day. Um, anyway, okay, let's sleep plasticine. Um, the defendants chose plastic piping. Oh no. They put in the system at night and initiated it. So it's like so they made a smokestack out of straw and then started a fire. They had plastic pipes, and the stuff that they were piping in was hot, hot, hot. And they turned it on at night. The system had a faulty thermostat, and the molten wax overheated. The plastic pipes melted, the molten wax escaped. It caused a fire, a huge contemplation, con, 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 contem, contemplation, contemplation, contemplation. I can't say. I jumped in. I was so ready. By the morning, the entire factory was destroyed. I bet it was the biggest claim damages in England. They sought to rely on a clause in the contract that purported to limit their liability for contract breach. In Swiss Atlantic, the households had previously declared that whether or not fundamental breach extinguishes any protection of a limitation, there's a question of construction, not a question of the law. So, did the contract cover them? Because they're not budging on the law. And following the case we did not look into, the Court of Appeals held that the breach was so gross as to be fundamental breach, and the exception clause thereby automatically became ineffective, so the defendants were liable in full. They were like, it was such a fuck up that it didn't even matter. Like, it was such a fuck up. Um, it's like if your parents went out of town and they were like, no wild parties, and you were like, okay, and they came back and you burnt down the house, and you're like, but I didn't have a wild party. And they're like, I know that wasn't in the contract. That was worse. Um, since the company had to build a new factory, because you could, cause you couldn't fix the old one. No fucking shit. Lord Denning. Ooh, the House of Lords. They don't like Lord Denning. He said, contrary to the usual rules of damages and betterment in insurance claims, the defendant was liable to pay for the new replacement. I mean, yeah. It's not like, oh, you wrecked my car and oh no, I have to get a new car. Like, that's not the same. It's like, you damaged this and I don't have a choice. And maybe there's some wiggle room because, like, I got a more handicapped bathrooms or something, but like, no. Like, you have to definitely, if you have to tear down the old one, and you still have to get your pipes put in. They never even got their pipes. Um, Anyway, I guess this never went to the House of Lords, and I don't think the House of Lords liked it. I think they're like, this is what we fucking mean when we say he's doing the thing that's right and not the things that's just in the law. He's doing the thing that's righteous, not the thing that is justice. And justice is the letter of the law. And see, they criticized his decision, reaffirmed their earlier view expressed in this guy. Um, So this was interesting to find out the House of Lords is catty against Lord Dennings, who seems to be trying to righting the wrongs in this world and being like, you're so fucking stupid. You're liable for fucking burning down a factory because you not only did the wrong thing, you took it upon yourself to start the fire of your wrong thing. Like, come on. Come on. So we learned about that. We learned about plasticine. We learned about what was the other case? The photo production case where the security guard started a fire to warm himself, and they're like, is he responsible? And the House of Lords said no, because the contract said and damages. So, he's not, even though Lord Dennings wanted them to be, because he's a fucking knucklehead. Um, and this one where they had a coal boat that was supposed to go and get about 15 um boats of coal. I don't know if it was 14, 15 trips back and forth or 15 loads of coal. I can't remember now. um well, wait, where's the 17? Here we go. 8 voyages. I think that means 8 payloads. 16 voyages. I'm guessing. I don't know. Anyway, they thought he would be able to do 15. He did 6, but the contract said do as many as you can, bro. We believe in you. And that is a crazy contract to have. So, they said no. That's what it said. And so you can't get like extra stuff. You can say, hey, the delays you got were crazy and not part of the deal, but you can't do all this extra, like, and it made me look bad. You could have made other arrangements. So, then we got the S element, which is something that helps with producing um, RNA and helps bind RNA to other RNA to make DNA. So it makes DNA babies out of RNA parents. And in bacteria, like our friend Rhizobium etli. Was there anything else about him? It's a soil living bacteria. Um, and it settles onto root nodules of like legumes. So, root vegetables. So maybe not something we want around. And of course, I had started this with the Underwood Company. So thank you for this extra long episode. I'm gonna try to squeeze in another episode. I hope it's not this long. Um, Or, if you like the deep dive, tell me. I'll probably have varying links of them because I can't help but stick my nose into stuff. I really like history stuff. I really like legal stuff, even if I can barely understand it. Finding out the juice about who starts a fire is interesting to me, and maybe that's interesting to somebody else out there. So, this has been episode, I think, 5 of WikiWanderer, and I hope somebody liked it, and I will be back for another episode.